It's not only important for President Trump's criminal case, they really have set a framework for all future presidents.
The court is ordering the lower courts to figure out exactly how to apply today's ruling to Trump's immunity case, delaying a case that's already been delayed until possibly after the election.
The decision is likely to delay his trial for interfering in the 2020 election. The former president described the decision as a big win.
Above the law. In a series of hypotheticals, Trump's legal team argued presidents should have absolute immunity for official acts.
Trump literally told the Supreme Court he could order a hit on his political enemies and not face any consequences. Yeah, you heard that right. The orange turd actually argued he had the power to be America's first official dictator with a get-out-of-jail-free card. Well, the Supreme Court just responded with a massive 6-3 smackdown that has Donnie Diapers throwing a tantrum in Mar-a-Lago. Even his own appointed justices basically said, "Nah, bro. That's not how America works."
Any of the acts that they performed while in office.
I feel that as a president, you have to have immunity. Very simple.
Let's dive into this constitutional beatdown and why Grumpy Trumpy is freaking out right now. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Remember when Trump said he could shoot someone on 5th Avenue and not lose voters? Well, his legal team took that ridiculous boast to heart and marched into the Supreme Court with what might be the most bonkers legal argument in American history. They weren't just suggesting presidents have some immunity, they were basically arguing for a presidential get-out-of-jail-free card that would let them do literally anything without consequences. And I mean anything. The Supreme Court justices weren't having it. Justice Sotomayor delivered what can only be described as a verbal smackdown when she asked Trump's attorney John Sawyer if a president could order the assassination of a political rival and still claim immunity because it was an official act. The look on his face.
And he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him. Is that within his official acts?
Trump's lawyer stammered and twisted himself into a pretzel, trying not to give a straight answer. Seriously, how hard is it to say, no, presidents can't murder people?
Above the law. In a series of hypotheticals, Trump's legal team argued presidents should have absolute immunity for official acts.
But wait, it gets better. The justices kept throwing increasingly wild scenarios at Trump's lawyers. Could a president sell nuclear secrets to foreign enemies? Could they order the military to stage a coup against Congress? With each question, Trump's legal team looked more and more like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar, desperately making up excuses. The real comedy gold came when Trump's lawyers couldn't even keep their own BS straight. One minute they'd argue that practically everything a president does is an official act covered by immunity, and the next they'd contradict themselves about which actions would be official versus private.
Story: the Supreme Court just ruled a president has absolute immunity for core constitutional powers, however, not for unofficial acts.
It was like watching someone try to explain why they should be allowed to rob a bank because they were wearing their work uniform at the time. And guess what? The Supreme Court wasn't buying any of it. In a 6-3 ruling, they basically told Trump, nice try, orange turd, and shut down the absurd notion that presidents can do whatever they want without consequences. The ruling made it crystal clear that presidents don't have absolute immunity, which means Trump can't hide behind his former presidency to dodge accountability for his actions around January 6th.
The decision is likely to delay his trial for interfering in the 2020 election. The former president described the decision as a big win.
What makes this ruling extra delicious is that Trump has been using this immunity argument as his primary delay tactic. His whole strategy has been to push his trials past the election, where he could potentially win and then pardon himself. Classic Donnie Diapers move. Trump's entire delay strategy just imploded thanks to an own goal from his legal team that left even his hand-picked justices unable to save him. During the Supreme Court hearing, his attorneys committed the ultimate legal faceplant by accidentally admitting some of Trump's actions were private and not covered by presidential immunity. Imagine preparing for the biggest case of your career and then scoring a touchdown for the other team. This wasn't just a minor slip-up, it was the legal equivalent of showing up to court with your pants around your ankles. The moment was was absolutely priceless. Trump's lawyers had been strutting around with this grand argument that everything a president does is an official act protected by immunity. But when the justices started pressing them on specifics, the whole charade fell apart faster than Trump's relationship with his former allies.
The court is ordering the lower courts to figure out exactly how to apply today's ruling to Trump's immunity case, delaying a case that's already been delayed until possibly after the election.
Suddenly, they were backpedaling, making exceptions, and contradicting themselves about which actions were presidential duties and which weren't. You know your legal strategy is in trouble when even your own team can't keep the story straight. It created such a logical mess that Trump's lawyers were essentially tying themselves into human pretzels, trying to explain why some actions deserved immunity while others didn't.
It's not only important for President Trump's criminal case, they really have set a framework for all future presidents.
The justices just sat there watching this legal train wreck unfold, probably thinking, and these are supposed to be the best lawyers money can buy. What makes this spectacular self-destruction even more delicious is that Trump spent years installing his personal picks on the Supreme Court bench. He literally bragged about how these justices would have his back when the chips were down. But when the moment of truth arrived, even his appointees looked at this immunity nonsense and basically said, "Yeah, that's gonna be a no from me, dog." Turns out lifetime appointments have a funny way of making people remember their oath to the Constitution rather than pledging eternal loyalty to the guy who nominated them.
US Supreme Court has ruled that Donald Trump has some immunity from prosecution for official actions taken while he was in the White House.
This legal implosion completely torpedoed Trump's master plan. His entire strategy has been built around delaying his trials until after the election, hoping he could either win and pardon himself or at least push everything far enough down the road that people would lose interest.
And not everything the president does is official, end quote. So a big question here is, when was President Trump acting in his official capacity?
This case is tied to former President Donald Trump's election interference case, one of the biggest rulings this year.
But now that the immunity shield has been shattered, his federal election interference case can proceed. The court effectively told Trump, "Nice try, but presidents aren't kings and you can't hide behind made-up immunity shields."
The Supreme Court did not say whether all the charges Donald Trump is facing are covered by presidential immunity. So it's going to have to be argued out in a lower court.
So there you have it, folks. The Supreme Court just told Trump what we've been saying all along. Nobody gets to play king in America. This ruling puts a massive wrench in his plan to dodge accountability by winning the election and pardoning himself. What a personal nightmare for a guy who spent his entire life avoiding consequences. The decision effectively blocks his delay strategy, meaning he'll likely face charges for his January 6th shenanigans before November.
President Trump recognizing for the first time this sort of immunity of ex-presidents from criminal prosecution.
Kind of poetic, isn't it? The Constitution worked exactly as intended. Even Donnie Diapers, with all his money and power, can't escape the long arm of American justice.